Stateline asked the acting Treasurer, Brian Green, if he was happy with OnStream competing in the private sector. In a statement, he said while the Treasurer has administrative responsibility for the Water and Sewerage Corporations Act, the government is not an owner of the business. He said operational issues are a matter for the OnStream board and Tasmania's local councils. The federal election has headed into increasingly unpredictable territory today, with Kevin Rudd in hospital in Brisbane having his gallbladder removed, and former Democrats leader turned failed ALP member Cheryl Kernot declaring she'll run as an independent for the Senate. As the Prime Minister Julia Gillard tried to fight off an image of Labor disunity this week, sparked by a damaging leak to the media, Kevin Rudd now says he's happy to campaign for her throughout Queensland or anywhere in the country. Political editor Heather Hewitt reports.
Hey, I'm a pretty good stirrer too.
Exactly 3 weeks of this to go now. Not that the leaders would necessarily be counting as they dash from one city to the next, making their daily campaign announcements in marginal seats.
The $16.5 million that we'll put towards a very important stormwater harvesting project here in Adelaide. Do you want to show me what you're doing, Anna?
For Tony Abbott, Adelaide was today's chosen location, as he also sought to outdo Labor's focus on the disability area yesterday by unveiling a $314 million plan to give students with a disability an education card to the value of $20,000 a year.
And this would be to enable the schools to do the right thing by pupils with a disability. It would enable pupils with a disability to choose the school that they most wanted to go to and to bring up to $20,000 of educational funding with it.
This one has 12 cores. It can go right up to 200 or more cores. Right.
For Julia Gillard, today's focus was on what Labor considers a big campaign plus, the government's high-speed national broadband network. She toured a company in Perth involved in the rollout.
Now, on the 21st of August, the nation will make a choice, and that choice is between me as Prime Minister and Mr Abbott. As Prime Minister, I will build the national broadband network. Mr Abbott will not.
The current government is proposing to spend something like $43 billion, maybe more, and it will be a government-owned monopoly. And let's face it, this is a government which couldn't safely put pink bats into people's roofs.
Julia Gillard and her Communications Minister released a series of maps showing 93% of Australian homes, schools and businesses would have access to the fibre network. But at the news conference that followed, half of the questioning was devoted to that constant thorn in the Prime Minister's side, the issue of Kevin Rudd.
Have Labor strategists asked Kevin Rudd to campaign outside of his electorate for Labor?
Look, I am respecting Kevin Rudd's wishes, and Kevin Rudd's wish is to focus on his electorate of Griffiths.
It was a Sydney Morning Herald report today claiming Kevin Rudd had been asked by Labor to campaign for the party outside his own seat that prompted the line of questioning.
I am, and Campaign HQ is respecting Kevin Rudd's wishes to campaign for re-election as the member for Griffith. No other request has been made of him.
Can you win in Queensland without his support?
I've just said to you, I've respected Kevin's wishes to focus on his electorate of Griffiths. Yes.
There's a strong and troublesome theme starting to emerge here for the Gillard campaign, and one that Labor had hoped to avoid by calling an early election instead of waiting until October. Kevin Rudd's name just keeps on bobbing up at news conferences, and even more so since that highly damaging leak this week on Cabinet deliberations. The observations of former leader Mark Latham last night on the possible source of the leak haven't helped.
You don't have to have a wiretap on the conversation between Kevin Rudd and Laurie Oakes to know it was Kevin Rudd. It too is one of the laws of nature, that Kevin is a serial leaker. This is what he does.
I am not going to be diverted by political chatter, politicians and former politicians talking about politicians.
It's the coward's way to get on the blow with Laurie Oakes and say, I'll tell you this, but you're not allowed to identify me. You know, it's the snake's way. So I challenge Kevin Rudd to be a man, to be honest, to have some honour, and actually, if he feels this strongly about it, put his name to his words. you know, I think it's unmanly and beneath a decent Aussie bloke to act this way, let alone an ex-Prime Minister.
If this is what senior members of the Labor Party or senior figures in the Labor movement are saying about each other publicly, what do you think they're saying about each other privately?
This afternoon, Kevin Rudd issued a statement saying he hadn't responded to the substance of anything Mark Latham had said for the past 5 years and didn't intend to start now. To add to the increasingly unpredictable atmosphere of this campaign, former Democrats leader turned failed ALP marginal seat holder Cheryl Kernot declared she'd be running as an independent Senate candidate in New South Wales.
I know it seems unusual, but I despair at the way politics in this campaign is being conducted, and I feel if there's one thing I can do, I can give voice to start some kind of movement for change.
To top it all off came the shock announcement of them all late today. Kevin Rudd was undergoing surgery to remove his gallbladder. A spokesperson said he expected to resume work next week, campaigning in his own electorate, elsewhere in Queensland and the rest of the country as appropriate.
And if Kevin is able, once he's made a recovery, to campaign in Queensland and around the country, then obviously I would welcome his campaigning efforts. I've always wanted to respect his wishes, and he's made his wishes clear today in this statement.
The Prime Minister can only hope that might put an end to the look of disunity in Labor ranks, the very worst look to have on an election campaign. But then, this is one like no other.